Well, I would like to welcome everyone here to AVA, and this is the second one we're doing this year, isn't it? That's right. You've already had the one for the Rossini opera. But I'd like to welcome you, and I'm glad it didn't snow yesterday, so at least you people came here. And I know we're really thrilled to do La Bohème. We could talk about La Bohème and its ranking in the operas. Is it the world's most performed opera, the second most? Probably every time I read something about what is the most performed opera, this comes in pretty high. It's usually rated the second most performed opera within companies. And we can go through lots of facts about it. I think it's really very nice to know that the first performance of this opera was February the 1st. So around this period right now, the first cast was, they were rehearsing La Bohème. What is it, 1896, that would make it, 114, something like that, 114, 15 years ago. Almost to the date. La Bohème was first performed in Turin, in Torino, with the great Arturo Toscanini as a conductor. Well, absolutely, absolutely. And the interesting thing, this is a side fact, is that Arturo Toscanini recorded the opera. Sure, he did it in 1946 and many years later, but at least we have, from the horse's mouth, so to speak, close to the source. So when you listen to a La Bohème, listen to Toscanini's, because he was pretty close to what the composer wanted. And also there's the Beecham recording, which Beecham studied the score with Puccini, so that's an interesting throwback too. But there's nothing like working with an energetic, young, first-time cast. I believe it's the first time for all of you. Anybody sung this? You might have sung. Oh, Marcello, okay. So he's the experienced performer in this part. He plays the wild painter in this, which is, I think, for me, the most important thing about La Bohème is the cast of characters. You know, it's based on a series of articles and short stories written by, well, originally the man's name was Louis Henri Murger. Since got rid of the Louis and just went with Henry, Henri. Changed the I to a Y because they thought it looked more Englishy, even though he was French, and put an umlaut over his U, which he eventually took off. And but his name is Henri Murger. He wrote a series of short stories called Scènes de la vie de Bohème, Scenes of the Life of Bohemia, meaning not Bohemia as in Czechoslovakia, but the word Bohemian really, when you think about it, pertains more to what we used to think of the gypsy life, the roaming, the wandering life, the free life. And eventually, as you know, that part of France, that part of Paris, became the Latin Quarter, because all the students in those early days spoke nothing but Latin to each other. And they had the Bohemian life in those years. Well, he wrote a series of scenes, short stories, about the life of as a student, Bohemian, artist, whatever have you, living in the Latin Quarter. It generally takes place in the middle 1800s, depending upon how full of skirts the director wants. If we have enough room, we give them 1830. If it's not enough room, we give them 18, whatever. But it's generally set in the middle of the 1800s. And it's about these young people who are starving, who are ambitious, who are poor, who go out and have a great time and regret it the next morning, whatever. I don't know about you, but I had a little bit of that happen to me when I was a young student. And it was great. I even lived in that area when I lived those 7, 8 months in Paris. And cold winters, but whatever you do to survive. And it shows you the life of these young people. You have a poet, Rodolfo. You have a painter, Marcel, and you have a philosopher, Colline, and you have a musician, really, called Schaunard. All these young artists, they're in their early 20s, trying to make it by being, writing a great novel or whatever have you. And And then you have the little love affairs that they have, which are important in their lives. With Marcello, it's with Musette, who I began to notice reading about some historical things. They called her a singer. Well, maybe she was a singer, I don't really know. But she's a very vivacious young woman who likes to dress well, likes nice things, and she somehow gets them. And she's with the painter, Marcello. And then, of course, you have Mimi. Mimi, who is, well, she's called a seamstress, and she is. She sews, and she likes little tender things, things that remind her of poetry, things that remind her of spring. She's generally portrayed as a rather shy, but a fun-loving person, and frail, somewhat weak. Her constitution is weak. So, and she falls in love with the writer, Rodolfo. And I don't know whether you people have ever seen, I adore the movie, the 1926 silent film of La Bohème. I think it's terrific. If you ever get a chance to rent it, rent it. It's with Lillian Gish and John Gilbert, who I think is sensational. I think he's sensational. For me, it's what a young poet should be. You know, he jumps in the air, and the painter's all paintery and full of passion. But anyway, it's a fabulous. And I asked them that they all see it, and indeed, we went out and got a copy of that film, and we showed it. They all sat down there and saw the movie, which, again, I think is terrific. But that's notwithstanding the fact that we're very fortunate always to have very good directors here at the Academy of Vocal Arts. And David Gatley is supreme in his work with especially young people. He has a great background working in a lot of institutions, IU, Indiana University in Brevard. Works with a lot of talented young people. And notwithstanding the fact that he himself has directed wonderful opera companies, you name it, he's international in Opera Canada here in San Diego, all the big ones, Dallas. And he enjoys work, and I enjoy having him in here. Come here, and truth be told, I shouldn't admit this, but one of my favorite productions always that I remember having done here with David was The Rape of Lucretia. Do you remember that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just stunning, wonderful. He does wonderful, and brings the great possibilities that they have out in these young artists. So let me introduce you, and maybe David, you want to say something about working here, or whatever, up to you. But this is David Gatley, our wonderful director.
So I have to go back and tally up how many I've done here. This has got to be 14 or 15 operas that I've done here.
And even Wagner. He's even done Wagner.
Yeah, I did the one Wagner here, which was really fun. It was really great. This is actually my second bohème here. And I think there have been 2 bohèmes since the last one that I did. Because it gets brought back every 3 or 4 years at AVA because it's just so perfect to do it with this age group of people. And that's one of the things Chris and I were talking about it, and how much we enjoy it is because when you go out in the real world, you get older people who sing these roles, and they do a lovely job, and they bring a lot of experience and artistry to what they're doing. But they're not in their early 20s anymore. And to be able to do it with people who can not only handle the roles vocally and dramatically, but they're the right age, it's very exciting to do it. We were actually talking about it the other day, and one of the things I told them was, the reason we love doing this is because you're all the right ages, and you're playing it like old people. You need to start playing it like young people. And they do. The work here is great. I've always done a lot of work with students. Then a few years ago, I took over the summer program at Brevard and really was able to shape my own program. I ran it for 5 years, and I found out that I think it's one of my missions in life is to work with singers, not only this level, but even younger, and introduce them to what the possibilities are of performing and doing opera and doing a full rounded performance that involves acting and movement and style, and as well as all the singing. So it's always, I think it's one of my missions now that I do this. I think this is a particularly wonderful group. We have, in some cases, 3 casts. So we do things over and over and over and over again so that every cast has the chance to get up there and work on it. In normal circumstances, I have to say that I'd like to just shoot myself in the head sometimes when you have to do things over and over and over again. But I'm having a really good time with this group because everybody gets up and really brings their game to this. I mean, it's very exciting to work in this way. Just a tiny little bit about production. There's very little I can probably tell most of you about Bohème. In the process of doing it here so many times, they've done lots of different styles. They've updated it. They've put it in different time periods. And I decided when Peter Harrison, who's the set designer here, sent me the first pictures, I decided that maybe we needed to go in a slightly different direction, even though we were going to use the same set, and take a much more romantic view of things. So hopefully what the final product will be a very romantic look at this, not kind of stark and modern, but very romantic. We are doing it in the 1830s, 1840s. You know, people ask how these decisions are made, how these great artistic decisions are made. And I just did a Così fan tutte at the Fort Worth Opera, and we did it in the 20s. And people are coming up and saying, so how did you choose that period? And I said, well, that was the set that fit. Because they rented the scenery, and that's the one that would fit on the stage in rep with the other things. So that's how these great decisions are made. Whenever I come to AVA, I always talk to Val Starr first, who does all the costumes here, and I say, okay, what period can we find the best clothes in? And then we sort of gear ourselves toward that. And it turns out this is a really great period to do it in because there's lots of Christmas carols and different pieces that she can pull from at the costume collection where she gets most of the costumes. And so that's why we've decided to do a more traditional setting and in a very romantic way. I hope it ends up being very romantic. I'm going to hand it back to Chris now, and if he has any further questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, and I certainly encourage you to have questions. I think that's one of the most important things upon have this of your being here, because now that we're all here, I'd love to tap eventually. I want to get onto the music now, as to why essentially you are here. Of course, you're here because you enjoy the music and you want. But I'd love to really have a communication, a dialogue going. Why do you like music? Why do you go to the opera? Why do you like Bohème? Yeah, you like Bohème. The melodies are pretty, and et cetera, et cetera. But it goes beyond that. And I'd love to be able to tap into a discussion as to what makes you come to hear these operas and why do you like. I don't know, I see some new faces here, which is great. And I would encourage you to come back again. But really, to really think about that. Do you come to the opera because it makes you forget about your problems, or it makes you forget about the mundane things you have to do, or whatever? I think I encourage you to really ask questions. And if there's somebody on stage that you like the voice, or you like the way he or she looks, introduce yourself to them. Go up. Talk to them, and encourage. I'd love to see you in a dialogue encouraged. Why are you here? Or what is your voice type? Whatever you want to ask. I think it'll be a benefit to you and to them. They love to be noticed. They love to be accepted. They love to have people come up and ask them questions. So I encourage you to do this, please. Well, let's get on with the music. I think it would be a good idea to introduce the characters, which indeed they are introduced very well in this opera. You see the first two. You see Rodolfo, who's looking at the window, typical, if you want to say writer, just looking out, trying to get ideas or whatever reason. And the painters are there madly keeping warm, in his third floor, fourth floor walk up, cold Paris in December. And they're worried about heat. And so you will see the two characters. And eventually, the philosopher comes in, who's really angry because it's Christmas Eve and he cannot pawn, I think, books, whatever he's pawning. All the pawn shops are closed, so he's really upset about that. And eventually you get the most successful of them come in, Schaunard, who's a musician who just made lots of money by teaching a parrot, which we're not going to get into. We're not going to get into why is he teaching a parrot. But anyway. And it's well written in that you get introduced to these characters one by one, and you will see, what their personalities are like. But think of it. these men, they're all highly, they're high individual types, high maintenance types. You can see a painter, a writer, a young philosopher, come on, I mean, really, a young philosopher, and the businessman, or the man that makes the money. So we'll introduce them, and we'll go as far as we can go, and we'll stop someplace. Anyway, who's singing? This is the opening of Act One. Yes, okay, and the tenor is not going to be you, you, right, okay. Why don't you introduce yourselves too? Why don't you stand up and introduce yourself, who you are and where you come from. Yes, this is, Hi,
I am Armando Piña, baritone, second year student of AVA.
I want you to tell them where you're from because I want them to notice that there aren't that many Philadelphians up here. They're all from
well, I come from Mexico, from Mazatlan in Mexico.
Right.
I'm Dominic Chenis. I'm a third-year resident artist. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada originally.
Oh, yeah.
Strangely enough.
And who's singing Chonard?
I'll be singing Rodolfo.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jorge Espino. I'm second year resident artist. I'm from Mexico City. I'm singing Chonard.
And here's our philosopher.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Schneider. I'm a second year bass, and I'm singing Colline, and sharing that with Nathan, and we're also singing Alcindoro and Benoit, the other two bass
Yeah, they're
roles as
doing
well.
double parfait.
I was born in Austria, and I did my first studies in New Zealand, which is where my mom is from, so it's a little
So
complicated.
yes, right. Okay, let's